Good evening and welcome to the Bhagavatam. I'm Rohit, and today we're diving into Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 24, the philosophy of Sankhya, Sankhya Yoga, it's called. And it's a very ancient, deep philosophy, which Krishna is now explaining to his dear friend Uddhava. And he's talking about very, intense understanding. So please pay attention and focus. This is regards how the cosmos shows up, how it winds down. So how it's created, how it winds down, and most importantly, how by understanding this frees our mind from confusion and fear. Now I'll read and explain the key points exactly as they mentioned in the Bhagavatam, and I'll try and keep it simple and relatable so that you can easily go through it. Okay, so what Sankhya philosophy does, it splits reality into two buckets, right? And those two are, let's take a look. Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti refers to material nature, and Purusha refers to the supreme being. Now, Prakriti, of course, when you say nature, we mean all things subtle, gross, as in physical, all the stuff of this world. And Purusha is about consciousness, the consciousness that is within me and you and all living beings. And ultimately, it means the supreme consciousness, the supreme conscious being from which consciousness emerges. So Krishna's goal here is not to present you some armchair philosophy. It's actually surgery. When you understand what's what, you stop confusing the body and the mind with the self or the soul. And this is vital. This is vital for spiritual growth. And so the clarity that you get by understanding this breaks the hypnotic spell of duality. And what is duality? You may ask. Well, things like gain and loss, happiness and distress, praise and blame, success and failure. This is all duality. And when you begin to move away from duality, because duality is generated by the mind, essentially, though that's the one that's receiving and sorting everything into good and bad, right and wrong. And then it's also generated by the world. It's not that there isn't stuff that's good for you and bad for you. Well, there is. But the moment you can move away from non-dual thinking from dual thinking to non-dual thinking, you begin to experience something different. You see and experience a different world. The world you experience right now is chaotic. The world as you know it right now is full of ups and downs, upheavals of all kinds. And this you may think is only happening now. No, it's been happening since the beginning of time. It's always been happening. All these ups and downs and chaos and upheavals, there's just different types of stuff, but it's a thing that never stops. So what happens is when you go from this dualistic vision of the world to the non-dual steadiness of the soul, everything calms down. There's inner peace, there's inner calm, and there's a joy that emerges from within your soul, from your true self. And this is what we all want. This is what we're longing for, but we're not able to get it in the world. And then we're frustrated. And so we try to escape the world by taking some drug or entertainment or whatever else that we can do to divert and distract ourselves. What this Sankhya philosophy is attempting to do here is to break the spell and the illusion so we can see things more clearly. So Krishna describes Sankhya here as it was established by ancient authorities. By understanding it, we drop the illusion of material duality and regain our original spiritual consciousness. This Sankhya that he's talking about is the same as that was taught by Kapila in the Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3. We've gone over it in earlier episodes. It's not the later atheistic version. The material elements, so now the elements of Prakriti, of material nature, evolve in sequence by the Supreme Lord's potency. Matter does not evolve from matter. The whole idea of this, the way that we've been told about the Big Bang, and then we've told about the story of evolution. It's a wonderful story. but it has no evidence and proof to back it up. No, there isn't evidence to prove that one species changes into another, the theory of evolution, and there is no evidence that can actually show you a big bang and out of which then life emerges. These are speculative theories at best. It might be based on whatever some person thinks and conjectures and comes up with some kind of inference, but there is no actual proof, and nor can it be demonstrated, nor can it be done as an experiment and they can demonstrate to us and reproduce it. No, they can't. So matter does not evolve from matter. Matter animates because of the presence of life or consciousness within it. When the soul enters the body becomes active. When the soul leaves the body dies. It's a very simple understanding. Electricity enters the light bulb lights up. Electricity enters your TV begins to work. But the electricity leaves it. If there's a power outage or something like that, then that TV will not work. That light bulb will not work because there's no power. So unless consciousness enters within matter, matter cannot move. My body is moving now because of the presence of consciousness within it. The day this consciousness leaves, this same body will not be able to move even the smallest bit. Now, while evolution can be said to be a fact, but consciousness does evolve within its own silo. Human beings evolve. Monkeys evolve. But monkeys do not evolve into humans. That's the big mistake that Darwin made. Because there's no evidence of that. That's just complete, conjecture again. So the various species serve as vehicles for consciousness. And then that same consciousness transmigrates as consciousness evolves. As our consciousness evolves, we go into higher and more sophisticated species of human beings even. As our consciousness devolves, we go into lower consciousness entities. And those could be animals, those could be insects. If we do not use this human form of life for that which it is meant, then there's no need to have it. As for matter, matter is never conscious. It is always inert. Life comes from life. One living being produces another living being. This is common sense. We've seen it. We've been seeing it all our lives. One living being produces another living being. A male and female dog or a male and female human or monkey or whatever creature will produce another of their own species. A living being will give birth to another living being. Life produces life. It's not complicated. So in a movie studio, if you think about it, there are cameras, there's actors, there's lights. All these ingredients don't make the film. They need a director, a scriptwriter, a producer. In the same way, Krishna's glance is the conscious energy that sets the universe into motion. Now, we're going to start from a point of the beginning. You know how they say in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. Well, let's go back even before any of that stuff. In the beginning, there was nothing. This is called the cosmic dissolution, to dissolve. The whole universe, the cosmos, with all its billions of galaxies, dissolves into nothingness. Not exactly nothingness. It dissolves into something called the pradhan. The pradhan is an energy from which everything comes. That energy is like you can call it like a field of possibilities. There's different ways of describing it. We'll get to that some more. So during that period of dissolution, there was no duality. The only thing that existed was God. When there was nothing, there was God. It's a simple way of saying it. That God is the seer, and everything else is seen. He is the witness, and everything else is witnessed. But at that point, when there is cosmic dissolution, when there is nothing in the universe, then only God exists, only the seer exists, non-differentiated from the seen. Then we come into the first part of creation, and that's called the Satya Yuga. This is called the Golden Age, and we are now in Kali Yuga. This has taken millions of years. And in the Satya Yuga, when the creation first happens, there are beings. They are not Neanderthals. That may be somewhere down in the recent history there were some Neanderthals perhaps. But keep in mind that ancient cultures like India, they didn't leave bodies lying around. They burned them. And therefore, you won't find those remains. And plus, they are millions of years old, and so the bodies would be way underneath anything that has ever been dug up. So, in the original race of people that lived here in the Satya Yuga, people were extremely evolved and highly enlightened. They were experts in what is called discrimination or vivek or wisdom. They were seers. They were able to see the difference between reality and illusion. In other words, they were highly evolved beings. The Srimad Bhagavatam talks about this in the first canto, chapter 1, text number 2, where it says, "The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all." Reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. So it's really important for us to understand what is reality and what is illusion. Because it says then further, such truth uproots the threefold miseries. In other words, all the miseries that we experience, miseries caused by nature, by our body, and by other living entities, all of that is uprooted. We no longer experience the miseries or the suffering of the world. You could call that heaven on earth if you like. But that's not, the earth didn't change. The earth was always what it is. But the person now no longer experiences those miseries. They're living in a place that is beyond time, that is beyond the miseries of this world, that is beyond suffering. So it says, one who is situated beyond duality, desire, and delusion of this world sees things as they are. He is in the witness consciousness, the Sakshi Bhav. And as a witness, he is there in non-dual consciousness. And for such a person, there is no suffering. Just as when you sit and watch a movie, maybe it's a very action-packed movie, and the actors on the screen might be going through all kinds of terrible things, but you're in your couch, enjoying, sitting, eating popcorn or whatever, right? So this is what Krishna refers to in Bhagavad Gita when he says in chapter 6, text number 8, a person is said to be established in self-realization. This we're talking now, this is what self-realization is. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Knowledge is not enough. There has to be realization. One has to realize that knowledge. One has to actualize it. One has to live it, become it. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. So what is controlled in that person? Everything. The mind, the senses, the ego, all controlled. And because of that, there is clarity. The mind is no longer flickering. The desires are no longer hankering. Right? The ego is no longer getting agitated. And so he says, such a person sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. This is called samadrishti. To see all things as the same, all people as the same, because they're able to see the consciousness within that person. They're no longer focused on the external form. And that focus on the reality means that which is eternally true. The world, everything is temporarily true. It's not that the world isn't true. The world is true, but temporarily so. Everything is temporary, one truth upon another seeming truth. But that which is the eternal reality is the soul and God. So their focus, the self-realized person who has realized the self, their focus is upon that. That now is the center, the epicenter of their vision. They have become the witness. They have become rooted in the self, in the soul. They're no longer identified with the ego or the mind or the desires or the senses or the body. No more. That's cut off. They're there. They use the body. They use the senses. But they're not identified with them. And that's the big difference. They do not think that these senses are me, my desire, my thoughts are me, my emotions are me. No, not that's what we do. So in this initial period of the earth's creation in Satya Yuga, people lived with that level of clarity all the time. Now, in today's time, you'll see a very different kind of expression of what is reality. People say perception is reality. But this is a huge fallacy. In the dark, if you think that a rope is a snake, your experience of fear is real, but the snake isn't. Perception gives you a subjective version of the world, and that version can be, and often is, inaccurate. Hear me carefully. Perception gives you a subjective version of the world, but that version is often inaccurate. Reality continues to exist regardless of whether we perceive it correctly or not. Such ideas might be popular, but they lead to further distortion of reality. Already we are in the illusion of Maya. In this world, everything is actually an illusion, and everything is meant to entice us. This is a virtual reality we live in. And we think that our mentally concocted vision of the world is already, we're thinking that is reality. Then instead of challenging this view, if we are encouraged to believe it blindly, oh, my perception is reality, then the result will be conflict. My perception will differ from your perception, and then we will have conflict with each other, we will argue with each other, there'll be alienation, because there's no objective reality. And you're finding this happening so much now in our present understanding of life and the media, the news, everything else. Everybody's got their own opinion of what's going on. There is no objectivity left. The Bhagavatam states that even objective reality is not what your senses, mind, or ego perceive, but actual reality is beyond the organs of perception. As long as we see duality, we are the prisoners of the mind. Real freedom comes from the knowledge of Advaya Gyan, or non-dual wisdom, which is what Krishna is giving us here. So he says, Krishna continues now, and he says, the one absolute truth appears as two. So this is how creation happens. The one absolute truth that was only existing by itself in that space of nothingness appears as two: material nature and the conscious living entity that is us, who wants to enjoy that nature now. So we, living entities, come into this world and we try to enjoy material nature, never asking, how come this nature exists? How come these trees exist? How come these seeds turn into vegetables and fruits? And how come these animals exist? And how come I exist? What is behind all of this? We don't try to even look behind the veil of reality, or so-called reality, to understand what is behind it and how it works. So the whole point of this philosophy is to take you behind that veil and begin to see. So both these energies, both the matter, Prakriti, and Purusha, refers to, they're all potencies of God. They're all aspects of God. They're all coming from God. Prakriti here points to the subtle energy. Let's take it further. Yeah. Prakriti refers to the material nature, as we said earlier. And then there is what is called the Pradhan, which is very subtle. This is what existed before the creation happens. That is the potential energy. And then when the creation happens, it happens with the Mahatattva. And this Mahatattva is actually the cause of the false ego. It is the cause of the ego and of the modes of nature. And from this, the whole manifest universes and our experiences occur from here. So once Vishnu glances on the Pradhan, it gives rise to the Mahatattva. When material nature is agitated by Krishna's glance, the three modes of nature, which are known as goodness, passion, and ignorance. Goodness is sattva, rajas is passion, and tamas is ignorance. Right? So then these manifest to fulfill the desires of the conditioned souls. Basically different states of consciousness. Different ways of experiencing the world. You can experience the world in the mode of goodness, in the mode of passion, in the mode of ignorance. And so based on where your consciousness is at, that's how the world will appear. So creation happens to give the conditioned souls, that is us, another chance to learn that life without God or Krishna is futile, and that we need to return home. And if we turn to nature and try to enjoy the world, then the modes of nature capture our consciousness. So an example of this would be, you want to stay fit and healthy. That's a good thing. That's the mode of goodness, fit and healthy. But then you come across some cake, carrot cake, whatever cake. And now that's the mode of passion. I want to enjoy. And then you sit in front of a movie, a Netflix, and you're binging and you're sort of numbing out. That's the mode of ignorance. It's altogether goodness, passion, ignorance stage a coup and steal your consciousness. The world thus becomes a learning arena. The modes of nature keep shifting everything, changing the scenarios, bewildering our minds, frustrating our efforts to be happy, to be content, and to be satisfied. Like a mirage. Keeps that dangling in front of us, but we're never quite able to get there. The Mahatattva generates false ego, which is the cause of the living entity's bewilderment and entangles spirit with matter. This false ego, this is what we call the ego, it refers to in the Vedas as false ego. The real ego, the true ego, is the identity with the soul, that I am a spiritual being. That is true ego, that is true self, that is true identity. But this identity that I am the body, or I am the mind, or I am my emotions, or my thoughts, or my objects that I own, or that I am my story and the things that happen to me, this is all part of the false ego. This is the narrative the false ego is caught up in. So the false ego shows up in three flavors: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And darkness grows as the light fades. So the light of the self, the light of the soul fades, and gradually the darkness of material existence becomes, as it gets darker, the projections of the world become more and more fascinating and more alluring. It's like when you walk into a movie theater, the darker it is, the more vivid everything is. So false ego falsely identifies itself, thinking I am this body, I am the mind, I am my thoughts, emotions, desires. In the mode of goodness, the ego would be, I'm a noble and wise person. In the mode of passion, ego would be, I am my achievements. And in the mode of ignorance, ego would be, I am helpless, nothing matters. So they're different masks, but the same mistake. Because the soul desires to exploit the creation of God. See, if somebody came to your house and wanted to exploit your house, use your house, do with it whatever they wanted, use it and abuse it any way they felt like, how would that feel? This house, this world, this creation is not ours. We didn't create it. We just assume that we naturally can put our stake over there and say, this is my land, my property, my country. No, none of it is your land. None of it is your property. None of it is your country. You can do whatever you want, and ultimately it is taken away from you. The soul desires to exploit illicitly the creation of God, but he is bewildered by the three modes of nature and assumes an illusory identity within the world. Struggling to enjoy, he becomes more and more entangled in the complexities of illusion and only increases his anxiety. His hopeless situation can be overcome by taking to real spiritual life or Krishna consciousness, in which the pleasure of the Supreme Lord becomes the only goal of one's life. That is the path of freedom. But in the meantime, let's understand how we get entangled. So now he begins to explain a little more about the process of creation. And that takes us over to Mahavishnu and the lotus flower from which Brahma emerges. And that's Brahma listening to the words of Krishna as they are. You see how it says the beginning, there's the word. Well, he begins to hear the word. The word is Om. Om. So by Krishna's impetus, by Vishnu's impetus, the elements combine and form the Brahmanda, universal egg, which is his residence. He appears within it as Narayan, and from his navel arises the lotus, the birthplace of Brahma. Empowered by passion and Krishna's mercy, Brahma creates the universe. So God himself doesn't create, he delegates that out. Narayan or Vishnu enters the universe without losing his transcendental nature. Unlike Brahma's body, which is material. So think of, there's so many ways to relate to that. But basically, the Supreme Lord enters into this universe as the energy of the universe, as Brahman. That energy, if you really connect with it, if you slow down and you experience the energy that is all around you, you will notice it makes you very peaceful. If you go into nature and you just sit with the plants and you're very focused and you're very present and your mind is quiet, you will notice how peaceful you feel. So why is that? Not because plants are peaceful necessarily, not because nature is necessarily peaceful, because the energy that is made up of is the energy of God. And that energy is by nature peaceful. Similarly, when you go into meditation and you go within yourself, that self that you are, the soul, is inherently peaceful by nature. And that's where that peace is coming from. So then it goes on in the Bhagavatam explaining that the heavenly planets were created for the devas, the demigods. So a lot of people want to go to heaven, but actually they're wanting to go to the heavenly planets where they can have a better life, less suffering than they've got out here. Really, the kingdom of God, that's a whole different thing. So heavenly planets were created for the demigods or the devas. The earth was created for humans and mortal creatures. Then there are lower planets for ghostly spirits and demoniac beings and nagas. So mystics who strive for liberation are promoted beyond these three, beyond the heavenly planets, beyond earth, beyond the lower planets, beyond these three divisions. They go to Maharlok, Janalok, Tapalok, Satyalok. So these are planets beyond that. Those who are mystics, who are striving and working on liberation, are given a chance to go to these planets that are above even the heavenly planets, where they can continue their work. So think of these as like career ladders. You're evolving. You may be in the lower planetary systems. Doesn't mean that you're in hell of some sort. No, it's more hellish compared to Earth. Definitely more hellish compared to the heavenly planets. But you can work your way up that ladder with hard work and discipline as you do in a corporate world. But ultimately, you need to do something that goes, even though you may reach the ultimate ladder, you might become the CEO of the company or whatever else. But ultimately, what you want at the heart of it all is to come home. You want to get back, go back home, go back to love. For the soul, that home where love is the ultimate ruler is a different dimension altogether. And that dimension means going back to Krishna. That's not a promotion. It's a true return home. Many of us wonder, why am I here? What am I doing? What is this life all about? Because we're beginning to understand that this isn't our home. Now Krishna begins to talk about time. In the Bhagavad Gita, he's mentioned this. He says, time, I am destroyer of worlds. So he says, I am Kala, I am time. Time is the creator and the destroyer. Sometimes we rise, think of an example might be that sometimes we rise to the surface of a river, like if you're swimming and then you rise, and then sometimes you sink to its depths, right? Or somebody's like, they're trying to torture you. They might bring you out of the water and then they might dunk you underneath. So whether you go up to the heavenly planets or down to the hellish planets, all of them, Krishna says, are places of suffering wherein repeated birth and death takes place. In one sense, you're still in the river and you're still being carried away from your real home unless you get out. So whatever features, he says now, visibly exist within this world, small or great, thin or fat, whatever features you notice, you might notice this or that. It's hot, it's cold, the mountain is tall or small, the person is tall or small or thin or fat. Whatever you're noticing, whatever features are visibly existent here, contain both the material nature and its enjoyer, the soul. Everything you see has two parts. And just as when you have, let's say, a gold bangle, right? What is behind that gold bangle is gold. What makes that bangle special, more valuable than a glass bangle, is the ingredient of gold. And so we need to always be able to go back to what is behind nature. What is the real ingredient? So he says here, gold and earth are originally existing as ingredients. From gold one may fashion golden ornaments such as bracelets and earrings. And from earth one may fashion clay pots and saucers. The original ingredients, gold and earth, exist before the products were made from them. And when the products are eventually destroyed, the original ingredients, that is gold and earth, will still remain. So this is the whole philosophy of creation, that from the energy of God comes the creation. And when the creation is dissolved, it enters back into God. Krishna then explains that one created thing becomes the cause of another. Just like you might create some object, you might make a painting, you might write a book, you might create anything, whatever. The people have made so many products, right? So one created thing, that is yourself, becomes the cause of another. Or you may give birth to a child, right? But what's real about a form is that it inherits the nature of its ingredient. The ingredient, if it was clay, became a pot, inherited the nature of clay. That's a clay pot. From gold came the bangle, and so that became a gold bangle. From a human being came another human being, and that's a human child. From a dog came another dog. Like that, it goes on. So that's basically the nature of the earth, and you can track this chain from from one to the other. So what it means is that although names and forms change, the essence remains the same. And just as bodies change from one lifetime to the next, right? We change bodies. Even in this lifetime, we change bodies. I was once a child. Before that, even I was a baby. Then I was a child. Then I was an adolescent. Then I as a teenager. Then as a person in my 20s and 30s and 40s. I've kept changing. My bodies have completely changed. My mind has changed. Everything about me has changed. And yet I'm the same person. In the same way we keep changing our bodies from one lifetime to another. But we're still the same person. Ultimately, if you keep tracking everything back to the source, you come to the Supreme Person, the living, loving source of all. That's where reality lives, eternal, blissful, and filled with loving grace. So Krishna then continues, we may conclude that the universe is real, not false, as some would say. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, they say. Now, the world is not false, the world is real. It originates from the ultimate reality, the absolute truth, Krishna, and then returns to him. While it's here, it spins a certain illusion. But that illusion is still a reality. It's a very real illusion. As long as the Supreme Lord glances at nature, the world continues to exist, perpetually manifesting through procreation and rolling out variety for the embodied souls. So this variety that is being generated through nature keeps on alluring us, keeps on calling us in. The latest version of the iPhone, the latest computer, the latest car, the latest whatever it might be. And it keeps us chasing and chasing and chasing. But when we stop and we say, hey, I don't need to be part of this rat race. I don't need to be part of this treadmill. I'm stepping off it. I can see the reality. I can see that behind it all is God. And that's what I need to be chasing. Not all this stuff. I don't need to be chasing the illusion. Because if you think of a desert and there's a mirage and there's a deer who's chasing the mirage looking for water, or a person looking for water in the desert, he's not going to find it. That mirage is going to keep on luring him and he's going to drop down dead because there never was any water there in the first place. Krishna then continues, he says, I am the basis of the universe, which displays endless variety through the repeated creation, maintenance, and destruction of the planetary systems. The origin of all life merges into me, the unborn Supreme Soul who remains alone, established within himself. It is from him that all creation and annihilation are manifested. So many people think, oh, we're going to merge into God. Well, that happens anyway at the time of the dissolution of the universe, everything, including all the souls, all the universes, all the planets, dissolves, and the energy of that comes back to God. Then he again glances upon it and it's manifest all over again. This takes place over millions of years. During that time, the machinery of the universe, if we can call it that, shuts down and merges into God. Now that doesn't mean we've become one with God and now we are God. No, that's all BS. We can never be God. We may have the qualities of God, but we cannot be God. Right? So the universe shuts down and merges into the source. And this is a temporary thing. And then again, it's recreated. So that unplugging, in a sense, is not loss. It's the presence that outlives change. So that dissolution only leads to creation. And so that we need to know what actually lasts, what is actually important. If you want, you can try a little exercise. Close your eyes and experience the sensation in your body that you're most aware of. Maybe it's the feeling of your hands or the itching of your skin, whatever it might be. Just close your eyes and then dissolve into the feeling of touch. And then let the feeling of touch dissolve into space, and then into sound, then into the mind's quiet. And finally, let everything dissolve back into the witness, the Supreme Lord seated within your heart, before whom everything appears and disappears. Now open your eyes. Notice you yourself as awareness. You were never harmed. You were always there. Finally, Krishna concludes saying, just as the rising sun removes the darkness of the sky, just as the rising sun removes the darkness of the sky, similarly, this scientific knowledge of cosmic annihilation removes all illusory duality from the mind of a serious student. Even if illusion somehow enters his heart, it cannot remain there. So, think of it like this. Even just the understanding, facing the understanding that one day I will die, that is dissolution too, right? Even that can be a wake-up call to inquiring, what is this world? Why am I here? Who am I? What happens after I die? And so further, if you understand that the entire universe is annihilated and then recreated again, and then annihilated again, and then recreated again, and that the whole point of life is really to understand that nothing in this world is permanent except for the soul itself. Consciousness is what is permanent. And that is what we need to investigate, and that is what we need to understand, and that is what will free us. Because this is not a faith-based system. This is a system of awareness, becoming aware of who you are, of experiencing who you are, and through that experience beginning to understand the nature of God. And as you understand the nature of God, you begin to understand the nature of reality. And then you begin to realize that which is actually meaningful and that which is not. The illusory stuff of this world, you realize, I've just been chasing a dream. So in purport it is explained, once you see that the body is not the self, the waves of confusion break against a rock. They splash, but they don't move the rock. Another way to look at that is that most problems are at the level of forms and names. Most of our problems are at the level of forms and names. You give it a name, I don't like this, this is bad. Or you saw a certain form, this person did this or that, this thing happened. Forms and names. The essence behind all things, all events, good and bad, the prakriti, the energy of the universe, and the purusha, or the witness, as well as the soul are intact. So the soul is intact no matter what happens. Whether you're sick, whether you're dying, the soul is intact. It was never touched. It was never disturbed. God was never affected by any of this stuff that's going on. He's there as the witness, sitting with us, hoping that one day we'll turn to Him. One day we'll listen. One day we will follow His guidance, how to get back out of this world. And if we understand this, then nothing can disturb us. Krishna says, thus I, the perfect seer of everything material and spiritual, have spoken this knowledge of Sankhya, which destroys the illusion of doubt by scientific analysis of creation and annihilation. In the purport, it is explained, Sri Krishna has explained that the material mind accepts and rejects many different concepts of life, generating innumerable false arguments about the actual process of perfection. But a person who takes shelter of his lotus feet can see everything with clear intelligence. One who understands how the Supreme Lord creates and annihilates can be liberated from material bondage and devote himself to the eternal service of the Supreme Lord. All right, let's put it all together now. The first part that we were talking about was about labeling the layers of creation. There are many different layers. And if we break them down, they'll look something like this. They're the elements that we come across, right? Body might feel tired or hot. So there's things that you're experiencing. There are your senses, which might be overstimulated, for example. There's the mind, which is spinning stories. There's the ego, which is got its own identity and feels threatened from time to time. And then ultimately there is the soul. So the idea is to go through these layers and come to the soul and recognize that actually you're fine. You're undisturbed. To recognize that nothing could bother you. Everything is okay. The mind, the senses were having a problem. The situations might have been problematic too. But you are okay. And once you know that, then you can make it through anything in life. The next thing he talks about, just to sum it all up, is to track causes back to the ingredient. So just like the gold bracelet and gold, right? If we understand that what is behind that bracelet is gold, then even if the bracelet breaks, we can always get it melted down and create something else out of it. Similarly, we understand that energy is never created or destroyed. I, the soul, will never be destroyed. So if I can go think back to the source and understand that God is always with me, God is never destroyed either. He's always been there, always will be there, and wants to connect with us. We come back to the ingredient and don't get caught up in the object that was created from the ingredient. So the objects are tools. They're not the identity. They're not the reality. But they are tools. We need them. We use them. We use our car. We use our house. We use the objects that we have. It's okay. Nothing wrong in that. We're not about giving up the world. We're about using it wisely, not becoming attached to it, but using it to make us free. The third thing that's been talked about here is to expect the modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, to keep rotating, to keep changing, our moods to keep shifting. And we will keep swapping them like a DJ, swapping the music. But don't freak out. Clouds move, the sky doesn't. Situations move, situations change, moods change, emotions move, thoughts move. But you remain the same. So stay rooted in the real self. You, the part of you that doesn't change. Through meditation, keep experiencing that part of you. Keep living and identifying with that part of you. Make that the center of your life. Make God the center of your life. Then the fourth thing it talks about is respecting time as Krishna's hand. Things like deadlines, aging, endings. Don't curse them. Use time to prioritize your spiritual practice. Chanting, reading, serving, and exhibiting kindness. Over time, you go beyond the river of time. Over time, you go beyond the river of time. How do you go beyond the river of time? All these spiritual practices, they take you into that place that is beyond time. Spirituality is beyond time. Spirit is beyond time. So when you engage in true spiritual activity, you experience timelessness. And then finally, make this idea of dissolution a daily practice. Every evening, mentally roll up your day, the body sensations, roll them into the elements from which they came, the senses, roll that into your mind, mind into ego, ego into silence, and then come before God. Come before Krishna and offer everything there. And then sleep like everything rests in Him, because it does. and you will sleep peacefully, and you will be happy. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you next week. I'm here every Tuesday. We will continue with the Bhagavatam. That's at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And if you're in California then or Pacific, then that's 5 p.m. there. And in India, it's on Wednesdays, and I think that's at 6:30 a.m. Sure. These days, it's changed with daylight savings time. Yeah, 6:30. All right. Hare Krishna.